Alma and welcome to my book journey. Today I am tackling the mid-year freakout tag, and at first I didn't understand why it was called the freakout tag, but then as I was going through the questions I understood, because I was doing a freakout myself because I didn't know what books to pick. I didn't know how to answer these questions because trying to remember, first of all, I was trying to remember all the books that I've read since the beginning of the year, and then trying to make sure I answered them as the best I could. And it was a lot more difficult than I originally had thought it was going to be. But anyway, welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you've been here before. If you're new here, thank you so much for joining me today. And yes, it is the mid-year. We are done with June pretty much. I'm filming this on the last day of June, and it's amazing. June just went by so fast, and this year has gone by fast. I mean, we're already here, as I said, the halfway point, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the year. I have already ideas in my head about books that I want to read, books that I want to read during certain periods of the month, and I know we have upcoming readathons that always happen. And I'm even thinking about December. Like, am I gonna do, like last year I read a bunch of Christmas books. I don't know if I'm gonna do that this year. I don't know, we'll see. But anyway, as for this video, this is a tag that was originated a long time ago, and I will link below the two co-creators that started this tag for all of us. And so I think, yep, there's only 13 questions. So I will go through these and just let you know what I chose for each question and how I feel about these books. Okay, so number one was, what is the best book you've read so far this year? And I wanted to really think about that, but you know, there was only one book that kept coming to my mind right away, you know, the first one that popped into my head, and that was The Frozen River. And I don't have that book. That was a library book that I got and I read this in January, and I read it at the end of January, if I remember right. It wasn't even on my January TBR. I remember I watched a booktuber talk about it, and I thought, hey, that's interesting. And then my library happened to have it. It was a new, I think pretty new release, but my library had it. Sorry about that, had to fix something. Well, anyway, The Frozen River. My library had it, and so I picked it up at the end, during the end of January, and I read it so fast because I picked it up, and I think I was going to read it in February. I was going to put it in my February TBR, but I ended up, I picked it up and I was like, let me look at it, and I read, and I couldn't put it down. And The Frozen River is the story of a midwife that lived, I believe, in the 1700s in America before, let's see, I'm thinking it was pre-Revolutionary War. I believe so. But anyway, it's a story, and it's based on a real person. After I read the book, in the author's note, it talked about this this woman that actually did, you know, live during this time period, and she really was a midwife, and her story, and the author wrote this book about her. And then I'm trying to think, because it was a story about this midwife, but it was also like a mystery. Somebody was murdered, and there was a mystery to solve, and that part was really good. There was a lot of politics involved in it, and then her story with her husband was really good, and her family, and it was just an overall, and the historical fiction, and that is my favorite genre. And so it was good in all the parts. The historical fiction part, the romance part with her and her husband was there, and then the mystery, the solving, you know, to solve the crime, who did this, because the book opened up with a great line about the body that was found in the river. And so it was and had some twists and turns in there too. So it was good, and I really enjoyed that book. So that was my favorite book so far of the year, because like I think, when every time I think of that, that's the first book that pops into my head, you know, because I'm still thinking about it. So that is why I chose that one. The second question is, best sequel you've read so far. And so I went through my book journal and I was trying to think, you know, had I read any sequels? And I hadn't read too many of them. And so the one I ended up picking was Trapped. And this is book 2 in, oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank on her name. Irene Hannon. Irene Hannon's series. And Trapped was book 2. And this is about a group of private eyes that take on cases, and there's 3 books in the series, and each book is about a different case that an individual private eye takes on in each book. And so book 2 was a really wild story. The person that was the bad guy was kind of weird, kook, really odd. I mean, it was a scary, awful story, really, about a young girl that was a runaway, and her older sister was trying to find her, and that's how she reaches out to the private investigator to see if they can help her find her sister. And then so the book is about finding her and how she's been abducted pretty much by a strange and very odd man. And then that's what the whole book's about. And it was really good. I really like the characters that Irene Hannon has, these 3 private eyes. I really like the first book, and I still haven't read book 3. It's on my list to read. That is hopefully, I don't know, we'll see when I get around to it. Definitely by the end of the year I will have read that, finished that series. Okay, so question number 3 is, new release you haven't read yet but want to. And so that one I'm hoping to read this one in July. And so that is The Outlaw Noble Salt. This one came out in April, I believe. I think this was in April of this year. I believe it came out in April. And so I haven't got around to it. And I was thinking, when I was going through my list of books you know, when I was trying to think of what my favorite one, I realized I hadn't read an Amy Harmon book this year. I don't think so. I read quite a few of her books last year and just really loved them. Actually, I have read them. I reminded myself, I have read one of her books, but that was way back in January. And so I'm excited to read this one. And I've talked about this one on some previous videos. But that one is the one that is the answer to book 2, question number 3 about a new release I haven't read yet. And then question number 4, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And that one is going to be the 4th book in the Timeless series. I love the cover. I'll put it up here. This book comes out in November, and this is going to be Gabrielle Myers' 4th book in her series. And the 2 time periods, by the looks of the book, and I think I remember reading, is she's going to be looking at the 1920s and then maybe the 1700s, having to do with pirates. So we're going to have pirates and roaring 20s in this book, and I think that's just perfect. And so if you don't know, Gabrielle Myers' Timeless series has to do with people that are called time crossers, and they live simultaneously 2 different lives in 2 different time periods. And they've all been 5-star books for me. Okay, next question. What has been your biggest disappointment? And so the one that I thought of right away as my biggest disappointment, and it's a biggest disappointment for a couple different reasons. Number 1 is this was I DNF'd this book. Such a beautiful cover. I DNF'd this book, and I can't think of what month it was. I just couldn't get through it. I went pretty far into the book, and I tried, but I was like, felt like I was just, it was slowing my reading down for the month. And so I just set it aside and decided that it wasn't for me. But it was a big disappointment because I really wanted to like this book, because I've heard so much about this author, and I'm just a sucker for a beautiful cover. And then after I DNF'd it, a lot of other people read this book, on BookTube, and they all raved about it, and how they loved it. It was so great. And I thought, you know, what is wrong with me? Why was I reading the same book? Maybe I just wasn't in the right frame of mind. So I was disappointed. You know, maybe I was disappointed in myself and the book that we didn't click. But maybe this was just not maybe the era that she was in, or the characters. I really don't know. All I know is that I haven't heard anybody say anything. Well, maybe a few people, but not, I mean, everybody was raving about it. So I was like, what, you know? But it happens. I've heard, but also it taught me something, because I've also seen books that I've loved, just love, and then I see people talk about them and they don't like them. So it happens. Obviously it happens. We're all different and everything. But this one was as for me anyway, it was a disappointment, because I really wanted to enjoy it. Okay, let's see. Let me get my list here. Oh, biggest surprise. So this is a good one. Biggest surprise. Since this was a disappointment, my biggest surprise was this book that I had heard that was, I mean, I heard it was a good book, and it's not a new book by any means. It's been, let's see, when does this book come out? It is, let's see, I'm curious, because I'm curious to see how old this book is. I thought it was older than that. 2017. Well, that's quite a few years. But it's this book, Fantasy Caravel. And so I kept seeing this one like on fantasy list and things. And so I checked it out from the library a couple times last year, and I never got around to reading it. I would check it out, and then I would just end up taking it back to the library. And so I found it on Pango, and I decided, well, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and read this. And if I'm not mistaken, this might have been a January book as well. It was early on in the year. And so I said, well, I'm just gonna read it, and I'm so glad I did. It was such a surprise, because it was, and what the good thing was, I tried not to watch reviews that told me too much, so I kind of went into it pretty blind. I didn't know, I thought it had to do with the circus or something. And so I went in really blind to what the book was about. And I had such a fun time with this book and the read of it. And it was, because it had so many, you know, twists and turns, and I really enjoyed the characters, the sisters, and the love interest in this book. And there was parts in it that just made me, it was just super sweet. Loved the romance in it and the fantasy element. It was different. It was at the time, I've read more fantasy since this book, but at the time I was starting to read, because last year I don't think I read a lot of fantasy. I mostly read historical fiction. And so this one was one of my first, like, you know, introduction to fantasy books. And so it was really good. I really enjoyed it. So this was a big surprise that I really, really loved. Okay. Next question is new favorite debut author or new to you author. So I did debut author, and this is Christy A. Cole. This was her first book that she wrote, and I really love this book. And she's also a booktuber here on BookTube, and I'll link her channel below. And she wrote this book called Ariadne and the Legend of the Fire Rose. And I tell you what, it was really good. For her first book, how she's creating a whole new world, really. And, you know, I couldn't do that. So, and to write up a fantasy world with a whole new, you know, places, and then animals she's creating and things. And so this is about the young woman that is lost, that gets separated by her parents at the beginning of the book, and she is raised in at a place that is nothing but mostly women, young girls, and that they're trained to be like warriors to protect the neighboring village. And it goes on from there. And this is book one. Is she's going to do a series in this book. I'm trying to remember how many she's planning to do, but I'm just eagerly awaiting for her to write the next book because I want to know what happens to this girl, because it ended on a real big cliffhanger, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I gotta know. So that is my favorite or new debut author for that question. And if you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. Okay, next question. Newest fictional crush. I don't think when I read books, I'm not thinking about that, so I really don't have anything to pick. And also, I was telling my husband, it's kind of hard to say that because that might spoil the book in a way. So I'm going to skip that one. Question number 9 is newest favorite character. And I went back and forth on that one a lot too, but I ended up going with this character right here. And her name is, I love this cover, her name is Vin, and I am reading the trilogy of the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson, and she is the main character. And I love her character because in the first, this is the second book, but in the first book we're introduced to her, and she is living in a world that is separated between the ones that, like the haves and the have-nots, basically, and she is what they call ska, like the peasant, and basically a slave. She was a slave to somebody, but she is, in the first book, she comes to find out that she has a lot of powers that she is able to wield in this world, and that is the really good part about her character. She grows a lot in that first book, finding out, you know, what she's capable of, and her and she learns a lot about her past in that book that come to light. And then she also pretends she gets involved in this crew that are going to do like a heist in the first book, and they give her a job to do, and she pretends to be like a lady, which is so foreign to what she is used to. But she does such a good job that she's starting to believe, you know, at one point in the book, she's thinking, you know, this could be my real person, or you know, she's trying to figure out her own self, like who she really is. Is she this quiet person that hides, or is she somebody that's, you know, that's out and about in public and presenting herself as a lady, a royalty, whatever. But anyway, then that book was really good. So the second book I'm reading is more growth for her, and I'm sure in book 3 we'll see her character, you know, I don't know how far he's going to take her or what's going to happen to her. I can only guess, but that's my favorite character of the year so far. Okay, so next is number 9, a book that made you cry. Now, I am a big crybaby. I cry at a lot of my books, and my daughter will tell me, "Mom, are you really crying?" And so I picked 2 books for this, and these one I just recently read, and this one I read also at the beginning of the year, Ruta Sepetty's Salt to the Sea. I really, really love this book. This book is based during World War II time, and talking about 4 refugees that are trying to get to somewhere where they can have peace in their life. They're in the middle between the Russians and the Germans, and you know, things are coming at them from both sides, and they just want to get to somewhere where they can be safe. And the book is so powerful with the 4 characters and how they're struggling, which is the things and the horrors that they see. And at the end of the book is where it really got to me. The way they ended it, I was crying, and this was my first book by her. So I've heard all her books are really, really good. So I'm going to try to read more from her. So this was one of the first ones that made me cry. And then I just finished reading this book for June. It's called The Boy on the Wooden Box by Leon Leilson, and it's a memoir of a young boy that went through the Holocaust. And I didn't realize that at the time when I picked it up that he lived during the time where he was involved in and you Schindler, and if you've anybody's seen the movie Schindler's List that came out, and I after reading World War II books this month, I recently rewatched that movie, and it came out a long time ago. It came out the same year my son was born, 1993, and so this story is about his time when the war happened, and what happened to his family as they went, because they were Jews, and it was just heartbreaking, and so I was in tears reading this book, and I'll talk more about that in my monthly wrap up. So that one is the other one that brought me to tears. Okay, let's see, what book made you happy? So I have an opposite one. So this one, the first one I thought of was the book, and I don't have that one. It's called Heart of Red, Blood of Blue, and that was just a fun read. It was another fantasy book that was recommended, and I read it really fast. I loved it. It was so good, the characters, and I kept thinking, this is one I would love to see another book, and I don't know if she has another book that will come out featuring these characters, because I really love the story. And this was the story about a young girl that was born into a family, and a family of royalty, and she was an albino. And in the book, her family hides that from people, and they paint her face and they cover her hair, and so people don't know she's an albino. And her father tries to unite with another kingdom by way of marriage, and in the beginning of the book, she is being betrothed to a young boy, and at the time she's 6 and he's 11, I think, and they're having a betrothal ceremony. They're not getting married, they're just being betrothed, and they are having this ceremony, and something happens that changes the course of her life, and a war starts that lasts for 10 years, and people are the kingdoms are at war because of what happened at that ceremony. And I don't want to say anything because I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But anyway, if you haven't read that book, I highly recommend that one. If you love fantasy, it was a clean read, a clean fantasy, and just really wonderfully written and a fun read. I really enjoyed reading it, and I read that with my husband, and he enjoyed that too. Okay, number 12, the most beautiful book you've received or bought so far. So that one, I am gonna pick a book that was, these two, they're a book 1 and book 2, and I think they're beautiful covers, and these were gifted to me, and it's The Recorder by Kathy McCrum. I just think these are pretty, really pretty. And then this one, look at the colors. This is book 2. And so I have not read either. I haven't read this one yet. I think I'm gonna try to read this one not next month, but in August, when I do sci-fi that month. This one will probably most likely be on my TBR, but I just think these are beautiful, beautiful covers. Okay, I think I have one more question. Let's see, yes, 13. What book do you need to read by the end of the year? Oh, I forgot to get that one down. It's still up here. Give me just a second. Okay, so this is the book I need to read by the end of the year. My son is like, when are you gonna finish this book? And I haven't, I started it, I put it on my shelf because I was reading other things, but this one I definitely need to read by the end of the year. I think of what I'm planning on. I'm already thinking ahead. I might have to split this book up into 3 parts, and so maybe I will read September and November, or maybe two months. No, I think I'll do 3, September, October, November. I think I'm gonna turn this into a fall book and try to read so much each month, and that way I'm not, it'll give me time that I have at the end of the year, because I really do want to finish it. It's just so much. This author just gives you so much detail into what is happening, and this is about the gulag that in Russia during the time before World War II and after, and so it's pretty intense. the portion I've read already is pretty intense, pretty detailed about really the terrible things that were happening. But anyway, so that is a book I definitely want to read by the end of the year. And hopefully, like I said, I'll try to finish it in November. Hopefully, you know, that's the plan anyway. Okay, so that is it. That is all the questions for the mid-year wrap up. Mid-year wrap up, yep. And so let me know in the comments below on these questions, and I will list the questions there. And let me know what's your favorite book of the year. I'm curious. What's your favorite book of the year? And like your disappointment, or you know, any question you feel like you want to answer. I would love to hear your responses to these, and that would be great if you would do that. And hopefully, because it's a holiday, I think I probably will not have my wrap-up video probably not till next Monday is what I'm thinking, because of the holidays. And so you all have a great holiday week, and thank you so much for watching and joining with me today, and you all have a blessed